All right, welcome into your 15-minute weather. I'm meteorologist John Ziegler with meteorologist Courtney Aiken. How you doing?
Halfway through the week.
Let's go. Wednesday. Yeah. Yesterday, we'll talk a lot about the disaster that unfolded for our Wednesday, which, I mean, some people didn't even know. I mean, if you weren't outside from 9 to 11, you're like, what do you mean? It was sunny.
What a difference a few hours makes. I mean, we were here. We saw it go from snow to this burst of freezing rain. And then, I don't know about you, but when I went out to my car, I spent a good 10 minutes scraping ice off of it. And then by the afternoon, I was outside and it was sunny, and I'm pretty sure I got sunburned. So, very interesting day.
You got sunburned?
Probably. I don't know. It doesn't take much.
All right. Yeah. I mean, so it was so I drove home. I got a long drive. So I was driving. I realized how localized it was when I was driving. So I left Golden Valley here, and it was ice.
Yeah.
Once I got to Minnetonka, so like 6-7 miles south, there was no ice. The roads were 100%. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was like this little localized northwest pocket up to St. Cloud that just got smacked, and then everybody crashed.
I was almost kind of conflicted on how to, with one of the graphics that I was building half an hour ago, I was conflicted with how to word this because it was localized, but for the areas that were impacted, it was this widespread glaze. So it's like widespread, but also a very localized event.
Yeah. I mean, across the metro, it was tough.
Yeah.
It was terrible. And so up towards Brainerd, Bemidji, when it was coming in, it wasn't freezing rain. And then right when it got to St. Cloud, and I think that it happened, and we could talk more about this, because right around 9, it just warmed up slightly more from 7 to 9, and then boom, went to freezing rain. So sorry.
Yeah, we'll talk a lot more. We'll talk a little bit more about kind of what happened and the different types of wintry precipitation. But first, we'll just kind of get you through the forecast for the short term, starting with your time lapse from this morning. Really pretty sunrise there, and sunrise happened at, I believe it was 6:57, so early today. A couple clouds passing on through at times, and it was cold this morning. The low observed in the Twin Cities was 10. We had 12 in Blaine, 7 in Cambridge, so definitely felt a little bit chilly, and that is what we were calling for yesterday as well. Negative numbers up in International Falls this morning, so where are we headed this afternoon? It will be cooler than yesterday. We're still going to have a good amount of sunshine, but rather than the 30s we had yesterday, today we're going to be in the lower 20s with winds mainly light out of the west. So 21 for the Twin Cities today, 25 for Rochester, cooler up north, 11 for International Falls, 14 in Bemidji. Big temperature swings there this week. And then as we get into tonight, teens for the Twin Cities, still some single digits up north and then down to the southwest, where again we're missing out on the snowpack. It'll be warmer with lows in the 20s. And for tomorrow, nice warm up, upper 30s, and by Friday I do still expect that will be in the 40s. There you go. Gusty on your Friday, but a high of 45. Enjoy that because it bottoms out quickly as we get into Saturday. 23 for a high. Scattered snow will be possible. And then Sunday is the first day of March. We're starting on a brisk note with a low of 6, a high of 20. And then we get a little bit closer to average with some lower 30s possible through about Monday, Tuesday of next week.
I'm excited. Once you get to March, it changes quick.
Yeah.
I want you to feel spring here in Minnesota.
I'm excited too.
You know, spring is interesting because it snows a lot, but it's not as cold. It's not nearly as cold. This weekend though, last weekend is February. I'm actually very happy it times out really nice so people can get out there and enjoy one last weekend of ice fishing, because on the the Monday you got to take your ice house off. So it's nice that it matches up this way. You know
Definitely.
what I mean? It goes right up to the end of February. Looks like it's going to be cold. So, I don't know, safety-wise, I'm thinking of getting out there this weekend for my last little sunfish crappie bonanza.
Bonanza. That's another good word. It's a good one. Yeah, I think.
I say the most outlandish things. You ever just sit through the thesaurus?
Yeah, I do.
That's like our job.
I'm like Eminem with the dictionary. That's me with the thesaurus.
Don't say the thesaurus. Say it 10 times fast.
No, thank you.
Do that. That was terrible. That's the worst. What do they call it? Alliteration?
Yeah, that's terrible. Don't do that. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, So we're going to go now into a little bit more in depth what happened yesterday.
Right.
We'll talk about freezing rain. We had looked at what we call upper level soundings, and yesterday the upper level sounding looked like, and we had talked with Ben Derry after, it looked like a sleet sounding to me, and I even said that before it happened. I was like, oh, that looks like sleet.
And even the day prior, Ben and I were looking at it, and it looked like a sleet sounding then as well.
And it's such a fine line, because what you're trying to do is the water droplet goes back to it. Maybe we should just get to the stuff. So we'll nerd out.
You can fast forward a couple graphics.
Okay, are you sure?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, here you go. Perfect. Okay, so this is the recap. You want to go through the recap, and then I'll go through the next one?
Yeah, I mean, we can tag team it. So obviously early in the morning, during our morning show, during the morning stream, if you were watching that, we were tracking on radar the light snow. We had snow up in Duluth, maybe a little bit more moderate there, but for places like Brainerd and then St. Cloud, we were seeing that light snow developing. And for most of the morning, that's what we were calling for in the Twin Cities Metro, was light snow moving in from the northwest. But by late morning, that's when we got a little bit surprised by this quick burst of freezing rain. It wasn't for everybody, but for folks that did see the freezing rain, it was heavy. And we saw that widespread glaze of ice on our local roadways. There were a ton of accidents, unfortunately. And even if you just walked out to your car, you probably found that glaze of ice on your vehicle. I certainly did. But then what a difference a few hours made. By afternoon, we had highs in the upper 30s. I think 37 was the official high at the airport. And we had plenty of sunshine, a little bit of melting going on. So it was a really interesting setup yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, by the time I was home, noon, the roads were 100%. So
yeah,
from when I left work to when I got home, it was totally different world. And that was because of we knew that sleet was possible, but it was tricky because the cold front, it was all snow in Brainerd and Bemidji. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, sleet maybe, freezing rain unlikely. It's 20 degrees outside.
Right.
You know, it's 20. I mean, it takes quite the warm layer aloft to hold on to freezing rain down to 20 because it's a game you're trying to play called Don't Turn It Into an Ice Ball. So this is a better setup here, and what we're talking about, something visually for you to see. Now, snow we'll start on the furthest right. Snow, the column of air, you live in the brown area, right? Where it says snow, sleet, freezing rain, and rain. That's where we live. And then tilt your head up, and that's the atmosphere up above you to the cloud, the symbol that we have. So snow, from the surface all the way up the atmosphere, it's below 32 degrees. Sleet and freezing rain are almost identical. Now rain let's go to rain. In the middle of June, what you don't realize is it's actually 32 degrees aloft. It's just 32 degrees aloft, then it falls into a warm layer and it never refreezes. It just stays to 70 degrees at the surface. It's called rain. But I think it's key to know that it's always colder aloft. Well, the two in between, you call these inversions. You lodge in warm air in between, sandwiched in between two cold zones. And they're almost the same. The only difference between sleet and freezing rain is that snowflake, it falls. They both have the same setup here. They both fall and melt into a warm layer. The only difference is what happens at the surface. A sleet has a smaller warm zone and has enough time to take that water droplet and freeze it to an ice ball and has more cold air to the surface. That's why I thought yesterday would be a sleet, because it was 20 degrees. You think that, I mean, the water droplet, okay, let's say it's 35 degrees in that warm layer yesterday, which is exactly what it was. So it melts. You think from 35 to 20 at the surface, the raindrop will freeze to an ice ball, right? But if you have such a sharp inversion and rapid cooling at the surface, the water droplet might not freeze to an ice ball. Then you have freezing rain. Most of the time, you've got a ginormous layer of warm air for freezing rain, and just barely at the surface, it'll be like 30 degrees. And it'll be 48 degrees, it's falling as rain, and then just to the surface it goes to 30. That's pretty common. But this was a weird one because it was somehow freezing rain, but it was 20 degrees at the surface, or 25. So a little bit unlucky. Typically the shallow layer, the small layer of warm air is sleet. That's the sounding that we had yesterday. It just happened to be freezing rain. Nobody I mean, the soundings didn't say freezing rain, so what are you going to do?
Yeah, and it was also interesting looking at the radar yesterday when we were tracking this in real time. It still looked like snow on radar, but then we started getting reports of freezing rain. We started getting text messages from colleagues saying it's bad out here.
Yeah.
But the radar, what we were seeing on the radar in real time was not indicating freezing rain.
Usually it'll come up at least as a mix.
Right.
But yesterday it was like, no, this is snow. And not only was it not snow, usually if it misses, it's sleet. But then it missed to the worst kind, and it was freezing rain. So one other fun fact about this is these are called supercooled water droplets. What is a supercooled water droplet? Because the question that I would have if I didn't know this is how can a piece of water or rain fall from 40 degrees down to 20 without turning into an ice ball? How is that possible? Well, it's called a supercooled water droplet. It's the same as hail, and we're going to be seeing a water droplet that is actually less than 32 degrees, but it hasn't made contact with anything yet. And usually you need a particle, or it needs to make contact with the surface, unless it's cold enough. So let's say the water droplet itself is falling through the air. It's now 29 degrees. The water itself is 29, but it can't make the change from a liquid state to a frozen state because it needs a particle. Think about it like you ever open your water bottle, you see water in your water bottle, and then you open it and it turns to ice immediately. The water in your water bottle was actually less than 32 degrees. It just never touched a particle to make the changeover. So as soon as you open your water bottle to air, boom, the whole thing freezes. That's what freezing rain does. It makes contact with the surface, and then it makes that changeover instantaneously, immediately, once it hits a surface or particle. So hail is the same way. It's just up in the atmosphere. But that's fun.
I don't know if that's ever happened to me. Opening my water bottle and having it just
I was thinking that. So you haven't lived here long enough to have this happen. It's like in your cup holder, you're like, oh, this water's going to be really cold.
Yeah, refreshing.
Have you ever opened a pop from the freezer and it looks like liquid at the beginning and it turns to slush?
Why do you put soda in the freezer?
Okay, does anybody out there know what I'm talking about?
I'm getting concerned. Like,
No, this is frequent. So have you ever had a pop explode in your car?
Me personally, no, but I've heard. Yeah,
I've had many pops explode in my car.
It's actually it's an irrational fear of mine that like I'll leave groceries in the car and I'll forget and it'll get cold and then I'll be driving along and sodas will start exploding.
This is one of your nightmares?
It's like Final Destination. I don't know if anybody's ever seen those movies, but like
something
that's not likely to happen, but it could.
Do you want to hear mine?
Yes.
My death one?
I do.
So I'm driving away in the back of for whatever reason, it's a dump truck, and I'm sitting in the back of the dump truck, and there's a tornado chasing me while the dump truck is driving away, and Bowser from Mario is next to the, and I'm not joking, I swear. Okay. So Bowser is chasing me I'm in a dump truck driving away. I'm like, go faster, but it can't. And then the tornado and Bowser catch me at the same time, and I die and wake up.
Well, at least we know that won't ever actually happen.
All right.
That's very specific. I like it.
Well, it's happened like 100 times.
I don't know like what you're snacking on before bed to like have
Bowser, get out of my
dreams.
Tornado and Bowser. I mean, it's pretty much my life. So anyway, sorry.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Didn't mean to top you there. But
that was a topper for sure.
It does. I'm sorry. But I think it's key to explain this because people in Minnesota who have lived here their whole life, it's probably happened to me 150 times. I don't know. Lots and lots of times. Where the water is, so like at Thanksgiving.
Sure.
In Minnesota, our refrigerator at Christmas parties and Christmas party is outside. You just put the beer outside.
Okay.
Everybody does it. Right? There's no fridge. You don't need it.
Right.
But a lot of times it's not. It's like 20 degrees in Christmas time. Well, you go out there and you're like, oh, I'm going to have a Busch Light. And you open your Busch Light and you're like, this thing's cold and it's still liquid. Mm-hmm. You open your Busch Light and you look at it and it's still liquid. You take your first sip is liquid. Your second sip is completely solid ice.
That would get on my nerves.
Yeah,
I'd be so annoyed.
Super cooled water.
Just like looking forward to cracking a cold one and like bam, frozen.
And you have that super cool water droplet inside the Busch Light. So the Busch Light itself was less than 32 degrees. So you're drinking the crispest Busch Light for one sip, and then the next sip, frozen ice block.
God.
Is anybody out there with me?
I'm sure there are plenty of people. That's wild.
It is wild.
Wow. Okay.
There we go.
I learned something
Freezing
every day.
rain and Busch Light.
You learn. We hope we teach you something.